All right, so we will start with our three invocation mantras, and this is really there to maximize our potential during our time together. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangu Langayate Girim Yat Kripatam Aham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripa sundaeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So just as the same as usual, the first mantra we said was asking for our teachers and sages from the past to remove the veil of ignorance which comes from darkness to help us realize our full potential. And as I mentioned, the second mantra is there to ask us to give us all the right words to speak and that we are trying to make the impossible possible. And then the third is giving respects to all those that have joined here today. So thank you so much. I'm really excited for diving into the rest of this discussion. Does anyone have anything to share from anything they read? At least we're continuing on from the third chapter, but does anyone have anything that they wanted to share just right off the bat, continuing on from last week? No? Okay, so we will jump right in.
No, just I want to say every time I read, I feel very happy and, you know, I go deep and I want to continue and check. I thank you. It's very, very interesting. And it's, you know, it gives me energy and more, you know, to continue this work. It's Perfect. Very deep. It's very nice. Very deep. Thank you.
Thanks for that inspiration, Hiba. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and just to recap from last week. So the first principle that we discussed last week was losing ourselves in the endless search for worldly worth. And I think we went quite deep into that one. We had a breakout room around that. The second is taking ourselves far too seriously. Now, in that regard, I have a link to share, or it's a quick little video that I want to share about this. So this here is a picture of an echo chamber. And so much of what happens, our environment around us, is reinforcing our story. And in that regard of just thinking about our position in the place of creation, I'm just going to play a short little video right now by the people have maybe heard of the astronomer Carl Sagan. So everyone should be able to see. Oh, hold on, I just want to make sure. Just going to make sure I'm sharing my sound. Okay. So this is a video by Carl Sagan. It's called the Pale Blue Dot.
The Earth might not seem of any particular interest, but for us, it's different.
So that video was just there. It was in fact suggested by my fiance Palak, and just having another video playing in the background.
What keeps us healthy and happy as we go through life? If you were going to invest now in your future best self, where would you put your energy? There was a recent survey of millennials.
What's everyone's thought on that video? It was really just trying to kind of us to zoom out, and that even in the cosmic span of the universe, you know, that the Earth is just a pale blue dot and we're just one person amongst the billions, right? And you know, that picture there at the beginning with the echo chamber is really just to put into perspective how loud and reinforcing our own story can be. And so that video there was really just to capture where, you know, we kind of stand in in the bigger picture. And I just thought that kind of drove home the point. We'll just move on to the next principle, which is, so we talked about this principle, and then where we left off last week was blindly pursuing our success. That is not our own. So again, that just I think everyone had that experience where sometimes they come to compare or are kind of told what their idea of success is from others. And a big part of that is usually our conditioning as what we've grown up from our family and friends. And so this picture really just captures sometimes that we're on the hamster wheel of life, sometimes pursuing something that's maybe not true to ourselves. Okay, so now we're just going to dive into the rest of the 3 principles so we can get at chapter 4. But the last of the 4th principle is continually waiting for our life to begin. So the way I think about this principle from the description here is, when I have this, I'll be happy, right? So this principle really gets at how we always are looking at what's deficient in our life and waiting for that deficiency to be filled before we can, whether you say live life, be happy. But really what this design principle, does is it takes us away from being in the present, right? Because we're always basically meditating on the future, right? And so remember we said that according to the Dharma code, if we're always living in the future, then that's always going to be a place of anxiety, right? If we're living in the past, it's a place of lamentation, and only kind of real happiness can be experienced in the present. So when I was thinking about this principle, I think this is, when we looked at this principle, I think all of us have experienced this when we go to Robin's events. I think this is one principle, like design principle, that he really focuses on, because he gets us to really try to, he really tries to kind of cut out cut out the fluff, right? And really gets us to kind of come to a place where we're not always kind of just striving towards that happiness. He wants us to kind of, be in this happiness, like in that moment of happiness right here and now, right? And so these are some of the thoughts that are coming to my mind when I think about this principle. Does anyone else have any, or does this principle resonate with anybody else? Please, Tiffany.
One of the things that just comes to me, of course, we can sit and think about this principle now. We're all in our 40s or beyond, and we've kind of gone through our early years. Like, what would we say if someone told us this when we were 20? Like for me, if someone had said, oh, because, we're so driven to go to university and complete and get the job and get a house and all those things. So how would this contrast with trying to keep someone motivated versus waiting for your life to begin? If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If we told a 20-year-old, you just enjoy yourself right now, and they would be like, oh, I'm just going to be happy and I'm just going to live, not go to school, or I don't know what they're going to do. But that would be like, I'm thinking, for the younger generation, or maybe those that have kids that are still here, Avni, like, how do we teach these principles as well to the youth?
That's a great question. Does anyone have any thoughts? I had a thought, but I'll see if anyone else has any reflections on that question to everyone. So I was thinking that, this here that we have captured in this slide, are you human doing or human being? I think, Tiffany, when we're younger, we're all trying to build the life we want to live, right? So it involves, most people would say, well, we have to work hard now for a better future, right? Is what I hear that you're getting at. And I think, at least at the time, if I were to think about this for like the younger generation, I would think that, at some point for younger kids, they have ambition, they have a lot of things they want to accomplish. to me, this principle is human doing human versus human being is just really taking moments in our day to step out of the kind of off the hamster wheel, where we are just appreciating, the smaller things in life, right? So, I mean, it could be as simple as conversations with our family, time with our friends, what we're eating, right? And so I think for me, like when I think about this principle or this design system and kind of how we can, not fall into this as much, it's really just exercises, for short amounts of time in our day on just being mindful and being right there in the moment to kind of step off the human doing platform and kind of step into the human being. I also think appreciation, the exercise of appreciation can also help us, the exercise of appreciation can also help us to not always be in a stage where we're kind of always like, okay, we have a deficiency, but in the state of appreciation immediately brings us into being thankful for what happened right there and now, or what has happened in the day, right? And so then we're not always, to me, like the exercise of gratitude is one of just seeing the cup half full rather than half empty. So that's just some of my reflections on what you were saying. Does anyone else have anything to add?
May I?
Me?
Denver, please.
Yeah. Gabriele wanted to.
I was just thinking, or actually it was more that I was feeling, when you told about all these eager things or the goals we had in life. If people like myself had so much emotional issues to bury when they were young, you're so much in a survival modus that you cannot listen to your ego. You're more in a survival modus. I don't know it's for other people the same, but for me, it sort of kept me more in a spiritual realm. It can be sort of not really grounded on earth, but on the other hand, I was more connected to the other dimensions. So I think if we're grateful and thankful, we can find a treasure in every situation.
Yeah, thank you, Gabrielle. I think it's also getting back to that point of just, trying to, as sometimes as difficult as it is, and even, as Tiffany, as you mentioned, even when we're younger, to, kind of stop, right? And just appreciate rather than always kind of look to what we don't have. But yeah, thank you, Gabrielle. Tiffany, do you have anything else to add based on what was shared, or does it kind of get at your question?
I think it does. It's back to the principles of just gratitude and appreciation. And
I think that's a very practical way to bring, to kind of bring this principle to life, because again, I always just look at, and I do this regularly, but when we just appreciate our day, then at least we're looking at it from the cup half full, right? Rather than the cup half empty. And I think that is a way to kind of help subvert ourselves being in this design principle all the time. Anyone else have any other thoughts or comments? I really thought
I wanted to say something.
One thing I want to answer to the question, how do we teach to our children this? Teaching is, I think, misleading, because if we are teaching them, so we are setting some limitations. So I would rather, because I am learning now, so I can share and let them decide for themselves. This is my experience with my children. So I learned from them a lot of in this matter. And with while I was struggling with them, so setting limitations, yes, no, and now this is I think the way I can imagine and recommend. Thank you.
Thank you, Enver. All right, we'll move on to, if anyone doesn't have anything else to say.
Happy.
Oh, please, Avni.
Hi. Yeah, adding to Anvar's point is that, in fact, I actually think that our children, especially my children, age of 11 and 9, they actually do live in the moment. They enjoy every single part. And I think it's the society that just makes them think, okay, now, like it's me, like the time, and let's get on, we have to achieve this and we have to achieve this. And it's, so I oppress this on them. But as you said with Robin Sharma, he's also taught me to not think about the destination, to enjoy the journey. So more and more, in fact, when we were listening to this, I was listening to with the children and saying, hey, you know, we're thinking about going on holiday, but well, look, we're all in the car together. Let's enjoy the time now. And so, in fact, they had smiles on their face. So it's about enjoying the journey. Which I think children really do really well. So yeah, and with what Enver said is also sharing, but also modeling it, just basically being a good role model. I think the children just then follow if you're enjoying it. And I know I'm not being a good role model because I'm always against time.
Yeah. Thank you, Avni. And I think it just speaks to the point that, you know, I see children every day through work, and there's, you know, when you have an element of being carefree, you're able to just, you know, kind of have experience things at a very different level, right? And so I think that, you know, that blank slate aspect that comes to being children, where they haven't been maybe lived life as long and maybe not as jaded, you know, can also speak to how, like you were saying, they can enjoy things much more, right? And that we as maybe parents also sometimes can maybe, you know, put them into this design system unknowingly, right? So great, thank you. So we'll just move on to the next principle.
Just one note, I posted in just our little chat, just a reflection by Robert Hastings, The Station, that kind of speaks to this. So if anybody wants to look it up, it talks about just being in the moment, and talks about a person that's always like, okay, when I get the house, I'll be happy. When I get the car, I'll be happy. So if anybody wants to look up that little reflection, it's called The Station by Robert Hastings.
Yeah, Rita, do you have it that you could just cut and paste it either in the group or in the chat?
I can get it. I can post it in. Let's see, how would I do that? Okay, let me think about it.
No problem. Homework.
Yes, and the note that you just said about children, it's so interesting because just one other thing comes to mind. Like when I was working in schools, and you know, children would sometimes have conflicts, and they would have a little conflict, and then they would get over it. But like the conflict, if it went to like a parent level where they told their parents, then the parents would get so involved and over the top, whereas the children had already forgotten about it and moved on, but the parents were still kind of like brooding with it. So it's true that we can often learn from children in terms of just how they deal with a conflict, they move on, they love each other again, and they're all good. So it's funny.
Yeah, I'll definitely say that because I'm around them a lot just in the work setting, it helps me not just to sweat the small stuff. All right, so this principle, living in constant opposition to time. And the picture of the calendar. Everyone hopefully has something to say on this principle. And I think just, you know, one of the things from this section that really resonated with me is that, I'm sure it can for most, is we've designed ingenious ways to do things more quickly, but we have less time than ever before. we're working, we can do so much more because things are so much faster. We don't have to wait for nearly as many things as we used to. And yet we feel like we have less time than we ever did. Please, I'm just going to open up the forum for anyone whose principle this resonates with.
One thing that just came to mind as you were saying it is somewhere along the line, I heard that, there's always time for what God wants us to do, in terms of kind of like there's always time for what's important that we're supposed to be doing if we're in tune with what our path is. So I just kind of really, that's always stuck with me. Like, yeah, like we can get so caught up with not having enough time, but there's always time with, in my case, and what God wants us to do or what our path is if we're in tune to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about this principle too. I mean, like my sister and I, we always are, this principle definitely comes up because I think I probably take on more than she does. And, one of the ways that I also kind of look at this is that if we really have, if we're also living our purpose and we're, really feeling whether it be God's work or whatever's driving us, if we're impelled to do it, then, filling our time, fulfilling that purpose is not always a bad thing either, right? So that's one of the ways, not that I justify it, but another perspective by which I see how we use our time as well, right? Anyone else have any thoughts? Because otherwise, the last line in this section here, it talks about how we can live in accord with Dharma. It says here, enters into vital engagement with life, and in doing so regards time not as the adversary, but as her greatest ally. And what I wanted to just maybe talk about is, just as a group, is how we could maybe look at time and shift it from potentially adversary to our ally, and maybe what people do themselves to kind of make this shift. If people have thoughts, I'm open to hearing and understanding how people look at this, because I think that's really the key, is how we can just take time and see it more as a friend rather than an enemy.
I would like to.
Oh, go ahead, Gabriel. You can go first. Gabrielle.
Who else would? I can wait.
Enver was just had something.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Okay. About what I learned about time, what I really love to contemplate about is that there are three different ways to look at time. One is the chronos. It's a thought from old Greek tradition. Chronos is the quantity of time. And kairos is the quality of time. And aeon is timeless. And actually, we are all timeless if we remember who we really are. And as long as we are not in this position, it's at least a step further if we live in the kairos feeling, which means that we are a lot more in the feeling of the quality of the time, because sometimes we can run around and do lots of things and there is no outcome at all, because we are so focused, our society is so focused on the quantity of time. If I work more, there's more outcome, but it's not true at all. It's if we contemplate and meditate, and if we learn to do things slower, more slowly, we are more aware what's going on around us. And if we are aware what's going on around us, we're far more efficient than by doing things fast. I practiced, so it's not a theory what I'm talking about. But still, sometimes I'm running around because I'm like a child. Childs love to run around. And then I'm coming in my old in my wise modus, and then I'm very, very slowly. So I do both things aware. Yeah, that's what I would like to share. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
It reminds me of the principle. Have people heard the time management principle? Like 1 minute of planning, it kind of saves you 8 or 9 minutes of time. Have people heard that principle? And so planning to me is the contemplation part before acting. And I remember when my mentor introduced me to that principle, I was kind of, it kind of changed my world. So just that simple thing, as you were mentioning, just doing a little bit more contemplation before acting. But there has to be, you know, for us to live our Dharma, there also has to be the action part. So thank you. Enver, did you want to share?
Thank you.
Yes, one daily experience what I had with the time is in the daily traffic. So if I see the red light or green light while driving, I say, okay, now I will go through it. And at that moment, it starts to blink and go to red. So, and then I was in previous time stuck and very angered about the situation, why it is always happening to me that I am stuck in the red light. So, and after getting more experience in personal mastery and also with the time, so I said, let go. Now you are waiting, and the second one will be green, or you will get into a flow. So at that moment, since I am not struggling, so it comes to a natural flow, and I have the feeling that I am now more in the green light than red light. So it was a really change. Also, I was always in a stress modus, not catching my appointment. So, and this was a very stressful thing for me. But after I said, okay, now you are in time, let it go. So you will come at the right point. It really happening things. It's traffic is opening, or I think it is in ourselves, also in the daily practice, to stay within the time, at the present time. So this was my experience.
Thank you, Enver. Hiba?
My relationship with struggling with time is curiosity. I'm very curious. I want to learn and do and experience and travel. So at the end, I do a lot, but as you say, for the outcome, so it's struggling everywhere. And my head is really a monkey. So sometimes a billion of ideas, even if someone is mentioning a word, this word means a lot of things, many experiences for me. So I guess for myself, I need really to slow down and to focus and to do, to apply more the strategy you're saying. Then 1 minute of planning is I will gain time. But I guess focusing and more planning will help me just to minimize this curiosity.
Thank you, Hiba. I think we can all relate to that. I want to definitely call out my sister, because I feel like she definitely works, works very well to not be in this, to live this unintelligent design. Can you share some life sagely advice?
Well, this is one area of contention with me and my brother, like a big contention we have, where he's late for certain things. He's gotten a lot better, I will admit, but this is something that, time, it's something really important to me, that I'm always respectful of other people's time. I never want people to think that my time is more important than anyone else's. So I really do try to honor that. And I am a bit of a planner, so that also helps with being able to manage my time. my days are pretty structured, and that allows me to get the things I want to get done. But yeah, as Hiba said, we all have our monkey mind, and things don't, we can spend time going through the days without accomplishing anything. But I think for me with time, it's just being really intentional about it. And that for me, I need lists, and I need, if 3 things or 4 things that I'm going to do each day, and being just very focused on getting those done. And then I kind of cut my page in half and say, these are the 3 things or 4 things I really want to get done. These are the nice things to do. And I manage sort of my time that way.
I really love it. I try to do something a bit similar, but I don't know if someone can suggest, I don't know how to minimize my curiosity. For example, even if I'm reading a book, I have any references, I go to the reference. Whatever is in front of me, I want to dig very, very deep. And I feel very, very happy of, or either experiencing it or doing it, or, and I'm extremely happy about it. So I don't know if I will try to do more to be what you're doing, but if any other suggestion, just to, to stop, not to stop, but to minimize this curiosity that I guess many of us have it.
I mean, I wouldn't discourage curiosity, but I would also say have an objective of like, what do you want to finish by the end of the day, or what is the goal or the objective of what you're trying to do. So if it is this book you're reading, the objective is maybe you need to finish 10 pages, but you continue on. Try to be more intentional, I would say, about what you're really trying to accomplish. So by the end of the day, your list is not unfinished because you got stuck on number 1 and got drowned out. It's like, okay, if I'm going to read today, it's going to be these 10 pages. I can go on, but that could mean I'm impacting the rest of my list.
Hiba, also just speak to that I think there's also part of our day, or what is, choosing activities that we don't have, we're not always on the clock or time bound. I think it's a very liberating feeling as well. And I think there's a lot to be experienced in not having bounds of times on chosen activities. I think that's also very important. And I'm not sure if anyone else can relate to that. Enver, do you have something to add?
No, I wanted to say to Hiba, don't minimize your curiosity, because this is it seems it is your drive.
And one of the things, is that okay? Hiba, one of the things that really got me when we talk about our minds wandering and trying to get focus is when I read Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I don't know if, how he says to block in like, what seems important, but it's not really important, versus like what really is important that needs to get done. And I try to keep that in my mind each day when I start my day, because there's a lot of things that will grab our attention that really just are not that important. But when we say, just like Rima said, at the beginning of the day, what do I need to accomplish? And then you can have time for fun and play and let our minds wander and read those articles and watch those YouTube videos once you kind of focus on the top priorities.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of this chart. Yeah, I will. I remember it now, and I need to reapply it more.
Mm-hmm. I just put another quote in the chat box that came to mind, is Robin's quote of let planning be your springboard, so spontaneity can be your splash. But going back to like that, planning is important, so that then you do have time to do what else pops in mind. And
yeah, that's perfect. It captures what we're trying to bring together for sure. Okay, perfect. We'll move on to the next principle, which is the last one for the 6 design principles. And if you remember the last one, if you don't, it's fine. But if you remember the last one being, so, believing we can get away with what no one sees, right? And so I'll make an assumption here that usually, monks are maybe not supposed to either eat food from like outside where they're living, or perhaps even like eat meat. This is a general assumption, but again, this will, and I think this principle to me, when the one word that comes to mind when I look at this design system, is just a principle of karma, right? What we're sowing is also what's going to come to fruition. What goes around comes around. And sometimes, even if we, as it says here, the belief that there's no consequence to what we do is really an important thing to remember, that everything we do has some consequence. And the difficult thing about this design system, I feel, is that we don't always see the result, or we don't always see the outcome immediately. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on how this principle impacts them, or have they thought about this principle at all in their day-to-day life? If we go to the quote here from Niccolo Machiavelli, he observed astutely that the great majority of mankind are satisfied with appearances as though they were realities, and are often more influenced by things that seem than by those that are. And so it says here, when we discover this about people, we may be tempted to hide behind appearances ourselves. We may also start believing, as many do, that we can get away with things, deceit, betrayal, manipulation, backbiting, hypocrisy, so long as we are not found. But actually, we don't get away with anything. We're always affected by what we do. Ends never justify the means. And I think this principle is a really, really challenging one, because I think I think society lives, it's kind of telling us, like, we can do whatever we want. We can eat whatever we want. We can, take as much as we want from the earth, right? We can, we can kind of have this overconsumption mentality that is, driving at least, capitalism, which I would say is kind of global, but definitely very prominently in the West. This capitalistic mindset, I think, completely goes in like strong opposition to this, to this design system. And it's unfortunately quite short-sighted, because, I mean, I feel that a lot of even, big, what do you call it? Pandemics like we're in, is also, there is the, there's our role to play in, what has come about. So this one usually, this design system doesn't usually sit well with people, because I think we all know within ourselves, we're maybe doing things that we're maybe not totally, aren't bringing us the best result, or something we know we can kind of change within ourselves. So it's it's one for kind of deep introspection, and also just looking at the world around us and trying to understand that, hey, like, even the things that perhaps we like purchase, we buy into, that we promote, that's also promoting certain, this design principle of maybe getting away with things that no one sees, things we watch, everything we're consuming really through our senses, right? Really kind of, if we kind of break it down, can kind of speak to how this principle, has an impact on our life.
Yeah. again, years ago, I came across it. I know just somebody mentioned just a phrase that said, like God sees everything. And just that like those 3 words is kind of like, it stuck with me. And so even though other people might not be seeing what's going on, but like that idea, like God sees everything. So there's an accountability there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that constant witness, even when we're alone, right? And we think that no one sees, definitely. And just bringing that, being aware of that, or even thinking about that can just change what we do in the moment, right? So, okay, perfect. So that basically wraps up these 6 unintelligent design principles. And now we're gonna just have an exercise that we're just going to discuss in the breakout room, which will hopefully just bring things together. But what we are going to discuss is, if we remember from the previous exercises, we chose a specific kingdom of our choice that we wanted to focus on. And so now what I want us to do in our breakout rooms is look at the design principles. So see these 6 design principles that we've discussed, and see perhaps which of these design principles are impacting our kingdom of choice. So does that hopefully make sense, everyone? So we're going to take these 6 design principles that we've discussed, and then we're going to kind of flip it and see, okay, the kingdom we've chosen, perhaps that we wanted either to focus on more, that perhaps, we want to improve on, or that we want to kind of, shine the light on more in our life. I want us to look at these design principles and see, are any one of these kind of playing out in this kingdom by which we can perhaps make an adjustment, to kind of help improve. So that's the exercise. So I'm just going to make the breakout rooms. Oops. So there's, I think, yeah, I see 12 of us. So we'll. All right, so let's go ahead. All right, I hope everyone had a good chat with their partner.
I have to leave now. I'm sorry.
No problem, Enver. We'll see you next week. Just remember, we're having Simon next week, okay? Anyone wanted to reflect or share anything that was brought up in their group about their domain and how these principles applied? Everyone wants to just keep it to themselves. That's okay too. All right, so we'll just we'll wrap up then. I want to just show one more slide, and that's basically just pulling us into next week, where we're really getting into kind of the 4th chapter, is finally now discussing the Dharma code, right? And so if everyone looked at chapter 4 at all, this is really now bringing these principles together, these 4 principles together through the Dharma code. And I know we've spoken about them in the past because I did the first 2 intro sessions. And, I'll just quickly just kind of run through what each, principle means. When we look at truth, and the Sanskrit word is satyam or satya, this domain of being, right? And that basically refers to seeing things as they are, right? And so one of the things that comes up when I think about this principle is, we talked about one of the ways we look at life in the previous chapters. We see things as we are, not as it is, right? And so to really get at truth, one of the things that we have to really examine in our life is what, misconceptions or illusions, do we have that maybe prevent us from living this principle, seeing things as they are. And I think, to me, having mentorship, having, guides in one's life really helps to uncover this specific principle. The second principle is the principle of of purity, which in Sanskrit is said is socham. So the domain of differentiating. And really this principle is focusing on being able to discern what is good for us and what is not good for us. You know, what uplifts us and what versus what degrades us, right? And so this is that principle of developing that discernment and identifying, you know, being able to differentiate these two things to be able to choose the right thing. The third principle most people are very familiar with, nonviolence, or in Sanskrit, it's known as ahimsa, and the domain of relating. So the domain of relating is not only with others, how our relationships with others, but also the domain of relating to ourselves, right? Because many times, unknowingly, we in fact inflict a lot of violence on ourselves, right? And so that's the domain of ahimsa, or the domain of relating. And then the last one is the domain of, or the domain of doing, or discipline, right? And so the domain of doing refers literally to acting, right? The action. But the Dharma Code really wants to focus on not just acting for the sake of acting, but the right action, right? So discipline is very important because it infuses all the other three principles. You know, we need to act to be able to, like, if we've discriminated and we've discerned, but we don't act on that, then we're not in fact living in line with socham, or purity, right? And then it's understood that these, you know, many of us, we may have thought about one of these principles or even two of these principles, but to kind of harmonize our life, that we're really trying to integrate all four of these principles, then we see in the center, that's when Dharma comes about, right? That's, you know, and Dharma, as we've understood in the past from the previous sessions, you know, it is our essence, is our essential way of being. One can, you know, also understand it as, you know, living our purpose, right? And that when the four of these are aligned, you know, and that we're trying to live all four of these in tandem or simultaneously, that's when, you know, we're really living what I would say is, you know, the calling of our soul. Anyone have any quick thoughts or reflections on this, which was, again, a very quick overview of what we're now going to be unpacking for the remainder of the book, because we'll go into each principle individually. Everyone's really quiet today. No one has anything to share to end with? Okay, so then we will end on that note. And just a reminder, we have the good fortune of having Simon with us next week. March, I think it's March 2nd or March 3rd. March 3rd. Yeah, so next week, March 3rd, Simon will be joining us, and yeah, bring as many questions as you have. I think probably what we'll do is we'll have him, you know, maybe dive deeper into chapter 4, and we'll pretty much use next session to kind of unpack chapter 4 a little bit more. And I mean, as you can see from chapter 4, it's really just the tip of the iceberg. It's kind of the overview of the entire model, but it's really good to have this overview then before we, you know, deep dive into each one individually. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. As usual, it's always my great fortune and honor to be with all of you and to hear from all of you. And I hope everyone took something away that you know, you can think about over the course of the week. And really, if you can, again, this exercise that we did of looking at these design principles and looking at the domains of our life, if you could continue just to work on this, because this will be really an area of focus that Simon will want to place, you know, as we move into our sessions together, because really now, like, we want to get off the platform of just kind of, you know, discussing this and having it be in our head to really applying it for transformation. because that's really why we're all here. So, Ida, if you don't have anything to add, we will end.
Thank
Ida,
you.
you're on mute. I still can't hear Ida. Is that just me?
Yeah, no, I can't hear her either.
Okay.
I can't. Thank you, everybody. Love you.
All right, Ida, you'll just share it in the group then. Thanks, everyone. It's good to see everybody. We'll see everyone next week.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Kim. It's just a lot of reflections and resonations. So it's just very deep inside happening something, not early enough to go out and somehow, because on every single topic you just can, it just makes think a lot. So it's just like a very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining us, Christina. And we look forward to unpacking all of these principles. I just put up the model and, we'll go into everything deeper.